And now I'm handing my younger daughter complete control of our Hawaii surf chain, my father proudly announced at my sister's engagement party. My name is Tabitha, and for years I built my business from the ground up, turning a small surf shop into a massive Hawaii-wide empire. But standing there listening to that announcement, I realized my own father was ready to throw my life's work away just to please his favorite child. The ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to bow my head and accept my fate. They expected me to be the submissive daughter who would just give up everything for the sake of family peace. They were dead wrong. I stepped onto the stage, my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I walked straight up to the microphone, looked my father dead in the eye, and watched his smug smile fade. Dad, you signed away all your rights to my business 2 years ago, and I have the notarized document right here. I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The room went cold. My father's face drained of color, his hands began to shake, and suddenly he collapsed, clutching his chest. Within minutes, the sound of sirens shattered the night. The party was over, and the war for my empire had just begun. You've just witnessed the opening move of a no-holds-barred battle. If you want to see how I systematically dismantled every plot from my greedy father to reclaim what is mine, hit the subscribe button on Revenge Mode now, so you don't miss a single second of this story. The early days of my business started on the sands of Waikiki Beach. I founded my surf shop with nothing but a few refurbished boards and a high-interest loan from a local bank that haunted my sleep. Every dollar earned went straight back into inventory maintenance and marketing efforts to keep the business afloat. My best friend Mina was the only person who stayed by my side during those brutal years. She helped me audit inventory during long, sleepless nights and provided the necessary moral support when the bank sent late notices. Tabitha, you are going to burn out before you hit your stride. Mina often warned me as we cleaned the storefront at midnight. I ignored the exhaustion because the vision was clear. After 4 years of relentless work, the brand exploded in popularity among both locals and tourists. I expanded from a single shack into a massive surf chain across Honolulu. The business generated millions in annual revenue, becoming a recognized name in the Hawaiian sporting goods market. I stopped being just a shop owner and became a business leader. Once the profits grew, Benjamin underwent a personality shift. He stopped dismissing my career as a childish hobby and started praising me as the family's greatest success story. He began showing up at the flagship office, shaking hands with my employees, and acting like a proud mentor. He wanted everyone in the business community to view our connection as a unified front, but I knew his intentions. He wasn't interested in my craft. He was strictly interested in the cash flow. Tabitha, you are the eldest, but you carry too much weight alone, Benjamin said during one of his uninvited office visits. Let us merge your chain into the family conglomerate to utilize our existing management infrastructure. This was the 10th time he had suggested a merger this month. He spoke as if he were offering me a favor, ignoring the fact that his company was struggling with debt and outdated models. He tried to frame it as a protective measure, claiming that larger entities survived market downturns more easily. I saw past the calculated smile and the fake concern in his eyes. Dad, I appreciate the offer, but the business runs perfectly without any additional management, I replied, maintaining a professional distance. He didn't take the rejection well. His expression tightened for a split second before he forced the smile back onto his face. I knew this was just the beginning of a persistent campaign. He needed a foothold to control the company, and I was not about to provide it. My decision was final, but his ambition was far from exhausted. I had to devise a way to protect the chain before he found a way to bypass my authority. 2 years ago, on a humid afternoon, I decided it was time to end the constant intrusion into my business. I scheduled a private consultation with Preston, my attorney, to discuss long-term asset protection strategies. Preston was a seasoned lawyer with years of experience in corporate litigation, and I trusted him implicitly to handle my private affairs. We reviewed the current corporate structure and concluded that a preemptive legal barrier was necessary. I needed something that would keep my father from ever gaining control over the surf chain. I devised a strategy that played directly into Benjamin's greed. I purchased a luxury beachfront villa in a prime location, a property so extravagant that it was impossible to ignore. The villa served as the perfect bait. I invited Benjamin to the property and presented him with a formal agreement carefully drafted by Preston to ensure its legal standing. "Dad, I've decided to transfer the management and full rights of this villa to you," I said, placing the document on the mahogany table. "In return, I just need you to sign this paper confirming you have no claims or ownership over the surf business." Benjamin's eyes locked onto the villa's panoramic view of the Pacific. He did not care about the business document. His entire focus shifted to the prestige of owning the beachfront estate. He grabbed the pen without hesitation. He did not read the legal clauses, nor did he ask for his own counsel to review the text. He was convinced that the document was merely an internal family arrangement meant to satisfy the bank's audit requirements. "I'm doing this so you can have peace of mind, Dad. You are family after all," I lied, keeping my tone steady and convincing. He laughed, dismissing my concern while his hand moved quickly across the paper. Benjamin believed he was outsmarting me by securing a high-value asset while signing a useless paper. He remained certain that no court in Hawaii would ever enforce a document that stripped a father of his parental control over a child's enterprise. He walked out of the room feeling victorious, unaware that he had just handed me the keys to his own legal demise. I watched him leave, knowing the trap was fully set, and that he had walked right into it, blinded by his own vanity. 3 months before the engagement party in Honolulu, Summer and her fiancé Grant began appearing at my office daily under the pretense of wanting to learn the business. They spent hours lurking around my administrative staff, trying to access secure customer data folders, while claiming they were just helping out with paperwork. It was a transparent attempt to identify my most profitable accounts and vendors, but I let them wander through the office without interference. "Tabitha, I'm going to be part of the family soon, so why don't you let me manage the marketing strategy for the surf chain?" Grant asked me one morning, flashing a smile that never reached his eyes. I ignored his arrogance and focused on my screen. Benjamin also shifted his tactics, intensifying his pressure on me to sign various management authorization forms. He framed these requests as necessary steps to support the family business during the peak tourist season. He wanted my signature on documents that would technically give him legal leverage over my operational decisions, even though he had already signed away his ownership rights 2 years prior. I decided to play along. I pretended to be overwhelmed by the workload, signing a few minor harmless documents to keep them complacent. This performance successfully lowered their guard. They became convinced that I was finally yielding to their influence, which was exactly the psychological state I needed them to be in. While they were busy celebrating their imaginary victory, I was moving in silence. Preston, my attorney, spent these weeks working behind the scenes to build a comprehensive case against them. He uncovered clear evidence that Grant had been contacting my major distributors, offering them secret kickbacks to terminate their contracts with my company and move their business over to a new entity that Summer was planning to launch. It was a direct attempt to bleed my company dry from the inside out, and Preston had documented every single conversation and email exchange between Grant and those vendors. My office became a quiet staging ground for the final confrontation. I organized a thick folder containing the notarized ownership document, a complete audit of my financial records, and the evidence of corporate espionage orchestrated by Grant. I kept this file locked in my personal safe, waiting for the perfect moment to present it. My team continued working as if nothing was wrong, maintaining the professional standards of the surf chain, while I monitored the impending collapse of my father's latest scheme. I had everything I needed to finish this, and I refused to waste any energy on a premature strike. 8 o'clock on a Saturday evening at a luxury beachfront restaurant. Benjamin climbed onto the small stage, tapping the microphone to capture the attention of the 100-plus guests gathered for the engagement gala. He looked out over the crowd, his face beaming with a pride that I knew was entirely manufactured for the occasion. As the head of this family, I am officially handing over the full operational control of our Hawaii surf chain to my youngest daughter, Summer. Benjamin announced, his voice booming through the sound system. He looked directly at me as if challenging me to make a scene in front of his wealthy associates. Grant, my sister's fiancé, stood by Summer's side, staring at me with a smirk that dripped with arrogance. He seemed convinced that the social pressure of such a public declaration would leave me paralyzed and silent. The ballroom erupted into applause, with many guests believing they were witnessing a heartfelt act of paternal generosity. I remained still for a second before stepping onto the stage. I didn't acknowledge the applause, nor did I look at Summer. I walked straight up to Preston, my attorney, who was seated in the front row, and took a thick legal folder from his hands. I faced the microphone, my grip firm, and stared directly at Benjamin. "Dad, I have something to clarify for everyone here," I said, my voice projecting across the room with ice-cold precision. Preston joined me on stage and opened the file, holding it up so the guests could see the official seal. "I am reading from a notarized agreement signed by Benjamin 2 years ago." Preston began, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. He read the primary clause. Benjamin had formally and irrevocably waived all rights to any surf business under my ownership in exchange for his beachfront villa. The room turned deathly quiet. Grant's smug expression vanished, replaced by a look of pure confusion as the realization hit him. Summer looked toward Benjamin, but he wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the paper in my hand, his face rapidly draining of all color. The guests began whispering, the applause replaced by a murmur of shock. The weight of his public humiliation and the sudden loss of his leverage hit him all at once. Benjamin gasped, grabbing at his collar before collapsing onto the stage floor. I didn't reach out to catch him. I just stood there as the chaos erupted around us. Within minutes, the sound of 911 emergency sirens drowned out the music, marking the end of my father's orchestrated fantasy. 2 months after my father was officially discharged from the hospital, instead of reflecting on his failures, Benjamin chose to escalate his vendetta by pouring his remaining capital into a targeted media attack. A series of anonymous articles surfaced across local digital platforms claiming that my surfboards were manufactured using substandard hazardous materials that posed serious risks to surfers. These baseless reports were designed to trigger a public health panic, effectively turning my customer base against me overnight. "Tabitha, if you don't want your professional reputation completely destroyed, hand over the surf chain to Summer immediately." Benjamin sent me a direct, threatening text message. The impact on my business was immediate and devastating. Revenue from my Honolulu outlets plummeted as nervous tourists avoided our locations, and several major commercial partners, fearing a PR disaster, sent formal notices to terminate their long-standing supply contracts. The atmosphere in my corporate office became increasingly tense, with staff members whispering about whether the brand could even survive the week. Internal morale hit an all-time low as employees began questioning my leadership while being bombarded by aggressive queries from the press. I refused to engage in a public shouting match, knowing that a defensive posture would only validate their false narrative. Instead, I summoned Preston, my attorney, to the office to initiate a covert counter-investigation. We needed to prove that these articles were not random accidents, but a deliberate, funded effort to commit corporate sabotage. Preston immediately activated his network of digital forensics experts to trace the origin of the funds used to pay for these smear pieces. We spent nights tracking every digital footprint, identifying the ghost accounts that had been used to pay for the articles. It didn't take long to find the trail. The financial records confirmed that the payments for these hit pieces originated directly from personal bank accounts belonging to Benjamin and Grant. We meticulously archived every single transfer receipt, invoice, and internal memo that linked their bank accounts to the media outlets. I sat in my office late one evening, staring at the thick stack of financial evidence on my desk. It was more than enough to dismantle their entire defense. I did not feel any sense of guilt for what would follow. I only felt the cold satisfaction of knowing that their greed had provided the very tools required to end their interference permanently. The war had moved from the public eye into the courtroom, where facts were the only currency that mattered. Monday morning at the Honolulu Commercial Courthouse. The courtroom was packed, filled with the tense energy of a high-stakes corporate battle. I sat at the plaintiff's table watching Benjamin and Grant enter the room. They looked nervous, their previous arrogance replaced by the hollow fear of those who realize they have finally run out of options. Preston. My attorney stood up to address the judge, his movements calm and methodical as he laid out the evidence of the organized defamation campaign. He didn't need to shout. He simply projected the financial trail onto the courtroom screen, highlighting every wire transfer that moved money from Benjamin's personal savings account directly to the editors of the local tabloids. The judge leaned forward, his expression darkening as he reviewed the evidence of the malicious sabotage. "Mr. Benjamin, can you explain these transactions to the court?" the judge asked, pointing toward the bank records. Benjamin stuttered, unable to provide a coherent defense. His voice was thin and shaky, a stark contrast to the booming authority he had used at the gala months ago. It was clear to everyone in the room that he had orchestrated the entire smear campaign to force me into submission. The evidence of corporate espionage was overwhelming, and there was no way for him to mask his criminal intentions under the guise of family support. After deliberation, the judge ruled in my favor on every count of the defamation lawsuit. The damages awarded were unprecedented, calculated based on the massive loss of supply contracts and the long-term erosion of my brand's market value. The judge ordered Benjamin to pay a massive sum in restitution, a penalty that far exceeded his current liquidity. As the gravity of the financial ruin settled in, Benjamin looked toward me, his eyes pleading for mercy. "Tabitha, you can't treat your own father like this. You're my daughter," he wailed, his voice cracking as bailiffs stepped forward to escort him from the proceedings. The scene turned chaotic. Grant, who had been witnessing the entire verdict, realized immediately that the family assets were being frozen to satisfy the judgment. He did not wait for the court session to end. Without saying a word to Summer or Benjamin, he stood up, turned his back on them, and walked out of the courtroom. He disappeared into the Honolulu heat before the jury could even exit their box, choosing to abandon the sinking ship before the final gavel hit the desk. I watched the bailiffs lead Benjamin away, feeling only a cold sense of finality. Early one morning, I stood on the beach watching the rhythmic waves hit the shoreline. The legal storm had finally cleared, leaving behind a silence that I had not experienced in years. Summer, stripped of her inheritance, and the lifestyle she once demanded, had moved into a cramped studio apartment on the edge of the suburbs. She now worked double shifts as a waitress at a local diner, struggling to cover the basic costs of her daily existence. I heard reports that she had tried to contact me multiple times through mutual acquaintances, begging for financial relief or a second chance to return to our father's circle. I ignored every single outreach. I changed my personal contact information and gave strict instructions to my staff that any messages from Benjamin or Summer were to be deleted without notification. My professional brand, now fully protected by legal precedents, expanded across every major island in Hawaii. The surf chain became the most trusted name in the industry, and for the first time, my growth was dictated solely by market demand, rather than the toxic interference of family members who saw me as an endless resource for their greed. Looking out at the ocean, I realized that the price of my success had been the total excision of a rot that threatened to consume my life. The legal battle had been exhausting, but the autonomy it bought was priceless. I did not look back with regret. I looked forward with the certainty of a woman who had finally secured her own borders. Money and superficial closeness can never replace honesty in human relationships. Never give in to people who attempt to exploit your labor or emotions, because your weakness only emboldens their greed. You must protect your achievements with robust legal frameworks, as those are the only truly reliable shields against those who would steal your future. Do not apologize for setting boundaries. And never equate blood ties with an obligation to endure abuse. True independence begins the moment you decide that your peace of mind is worth more than their approval. Thank you for listening to my journey toward justice. It was a long road, but standing here today, I know that my choices were the right ones. What do you think about my decision to walk away from my family permanently? Was it the right move to prioritize my business and peace over their survival? Share your perspective in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can catch more stories like this one in the future.